Hello everybody, I am Amanda Coulong, your host this week for This Week in Android, and I am here today with Mark Jeffrey, of course, and Jeff Amons, and we are here to, well, get things started. We've got Mobile World Congress next week, so there's a lot of news that's going to be coming up, I think, for that. We've got Android 2.1. Do you want to talk about that, Jeff? You know, a lot of things around that.
Well, let's start off. Let's see. So my phone doesn't have 2.1 yet.
Well, it's only out on the Nexus 1, right?
It is only out on the Nexus 1,
exactly.
but there's been a lot of...
And you have, what kind of phone do you have? You have
I have a Droid,
right?
I have a Motorola Droid. But there's been a lot of stuff going on recently with announcements and whatnot. I think Motorola announced that they're going to be putting it out 2.1 in the next couple of months on the European phones and on, I can't remember which model of phone, but on one of the other models of phones. And I think the Droid is included in that at some point. So hopefully in the next month or two we'll see that. I know some people have been...
Do you know why that is? I mean, why is it that it's only available on the Nexus 1?
I think it's just they tested the hardware for that, and I think
so. Basically, just hasn't passed the hardware test.
They just need to build a port, basically. Well, not a port, but they need to build a version of it that'll run properly on the Droid and not going to be throwing errors. So that's my guess. Is it's just there's a lot of time involved in using the different hardware. So, but good news this week is somebody backported a bunch of the 2.1 apps to 2.0. So like. I got here, if we could switch to the Droid cam.
Yeah,
so by the way, we're very proud of our newly debut Android cam.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Droid cam.
Let's see if I can get a good angle here.
Android
so this is
radio.
the gallery. This is the new gallery. It's not all that exciting.
So this is for viewing pictures, right? So
yeah,
all your
so this is just viewing pictures. Apparently, it asked me something about access to Picasso, which is Google's web gallery, and I haven't been able to figure out why it asked me if I could have access to that, but that'd be sweet if it tied in. Let's look at my Death Clock album covers. I mean, so this is basically just a regular, browsing your Photos apps. You can zoom and stuff. I heard rumors that it had multi-touch support for zooming, but for pinch support, but it doesn't work for me, so I don't know about that. Let me see if I can bring up another app here.
Yeah, so you have to go back.
So they also did Maps. They released that, was backported, and that has multi-touch support. I didn't download that yet. Let me see if I can find. There's a news and weather app, which I can show you here if it loads. It's pretty slick. It's got weather, it's got news. So here we are, Santa Monica, 54. It's cold. I don't know what's going on.
And rainy too.
It's good, California.
Like us.
So you can see. Then I got news, U.S. sports. I mean, so this is not all like an amazing, mind-blowing app, but it's pretty slick, and I like the weather tie-in.
But it's got the 2.1 feel to it.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Exactly.
It's sleeker. It's faster.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not faster, but it appears faster anyway. So. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Graph sheet, by the way, says multi-touch works on the Nexus in the gallery. So
yeah.
if you have the Nexus, it'll work.
Yeah.
There, apparently.
Are we talking to multi-touch this week?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That is the big news of the week.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the gun.
Besides the fact that we haven't been canceled. Conan's gone, but we're still here.
You can give your thoughts on multi-touch right
now.
now.
Well, I mean, I just heard there's a lot of stuff like they've started releasing a lot of multi-touch apps. There's some wondering as to why that's occurring right now, why it didn't occur initially.
So we'll talk about this. It was actually a news item, but it's so big that I guess we
it
can't wait
is,
till the end. We'll talk about
You're bursting at the seams over here.
Well, so the TechCrunch headline was, did Google just multi-punch Apple in the face?
Yeah.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, which is kind of a good, I actually thought it was one of their better titles. But, basically what happened is that, for those of you not familiar with what's going on the iPhone, you can basically pinch and open things very easily and nicely. People have gotten used to those gestures. And curiously enough, when the Android operating system came out, there was no multi-touch support, which is strange because we know that was built in. Now, the rumor is that Apple and Google sort of had a gentleman's agreement where they wouldn't poach each other's employees. They wouldn't. Google would not make their Android 2 iPhone like, and apparently, all those things are off, and the fight is on. So,
the rumor I saw in some comments somewhere is actually that it's been about 6 months since a certain Google high member, I think it was either Sergey or Larry, left the board at Apple. So there's some speculation as to the non-disclosure agreement related to that being on the board there. Could have been 6 months, could have been like a year, but so I'm not sure. That one kind of caught my attention.
Well, so I'm reading the article here, and it says that Andy Rubin, who is the Android chief, basically said, with respect to multi-touch, he just didn't like the feature.
Yeah, I know about that.
Which I think he's probably the only person on the planet who feels that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't really care too much for it because supposing I'm in a map or something like that.
So both you guys are of the same.
Yeah, so the two of us.
Yeah. Great minds think alike.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. No, I'll be working at Google soon. See you guys later. No, like, so if I'm holding this with one hand, there's no way I'm gonna be able to pinch and like do it. So if you
We should show the Android cam. So.
yeah, let's see the Android cam.
Back to the Android cam.
So if I'm holding this in one hand and I'm looking at a map as opposed to my blank screen, I can't multi-touch with my thumb, but I can like click a button that zooms in.
But that's just because you're a one-hand
I mean, that's the way I use it. Yeah. I mean, if I'm wouldn't be doing it while I'm driving. If I'm riding my bike, say
you would actually, but that's right.
I could do it one-handed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I think maybe just my opinion, but
yeah. Well, I guess we'll jump in and get some other thoughts on multi-touch throughout the show. But
sure.
One other quick point too: Samsung just announced the M100 that's going to be available in about a month, and that is also going to feature 2.1. So I think I'm curious to see what else comes out as we lead up to Mobile World Congress.
Yeah, we're going to see a flurry of announcements, I would imagine. So
I hope so.
All right.
I'm excited for 2.1.
Great. Well, thank you for your time, Jeff. I think we're going to switch on over now to App of the Week. So, yeah. Switch that on out.
Oh, you probably want to leave that in there. Just, he's already got his microphone.
Here we go.
That,
just a minute here as we switch out.
I blame me.
Jeff was a little slow in the draw there. Oh, well.
Jeff. So, folks, we have here today Jeremy Almond, who's founder and CEO of SocialGuides. So tell us a little bit about what SocialGuides is about.
Thanks, Amanda. So we are a location-based client for Twitter. And what we do is we make it really easy to look up restaurants, hotels, and nightlife and see what everybody on Twitter and the real-time web are talking about it, what people are checking in, what's kind of going on at the pulse at that moment. So you could kind of think of it as Twitter meets Yelp, very simply.
Okay. So where does it fit in? Obviously, people are going to ask. You have all these other services like GoWalla and Foursquare that are based more around kind of a game aspect. How does it compare, fit in with all of that?
Yeah, so we actually really like those guys. So they're showing how well location-based services are working. So you've got Foursquare and GoWalla, and Yelp is just now doing check-in. So what's really nice is all of those systems publish to the Twitter stream. And so what you can actually do on our product is go and see any given restaurant, and you'll see, oh, look, here's a Foursquare check-in, and here's a GoWalla check-in, and then, but maybe more importantly, so people checked in, and then you might say, oh, well, but Amanda said this place is great, we're having drinks right now, you should come by, right? So you get a nice combination of the review space, of the check-in space, and then what's going on in real time when people are talking about the place. So
I think what's nice about that too is some people use GoWalla, some people use Foursquare, a handful of people might still use BrightKite. So you've got all these different services, and your friends are across all of them, and if you're just using one of them, you're missing the people on the others. So this sort of aggregates all of that,
Exactly, right? Exactly. So we make it really simple to kind of know what's going on. And then you can do all kinds of interesting things about knowing basically a trending place. So what's great about Twitter, one of the things that they've shown a lot of value is what are these sort of trending topics? So what we can do now is say, well, what are the trending places that people are actually talking about that are checking and that sort of thing. So
I would imagine this would be really great on the business side too for the merchants, right? I mean, because when it comes to Yelp and places like that, there are huge spaces between when people get reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see that these are sort of activities that the business is already engaging in right now, and we're seeing a lot of it in Southern California particularly, where businesses are really interested to be basically talking to the customers. So this is a really great product for them to basically get involved with the conversations.
Now you developed this on the Android platform first, is that correct?
We did. We made kind of an interesting decision at the point where...
That is a really interesting decision. That's the inverse of what most people choose.
Yeah.
It is. So we just took basically a poll of the landscape, and when we started developing at the time, there was a really good opportunity because the marketplace was a bit immature at the time. So what it did was give us a very strong product in the market where people were looking for location services, and particularly some of the big name publishers hadn't yet ported sort of large native apps. So we thought it'd be a great product to go and say, hey, we're kind of betting a bit on Android as it grows as a platform, and we wanted to be one of the first people that were there. So.
Do you think that who's your competition? Is it essentially Foursquare and those folks, or is it? Well, in your mind, who is it?
What's nice is there's a bit of a cooperation mentality in this industry. So we really like what Foursquare is doing, and we really like what Yelp are doing, and so we think we're really complementary to sitting in the space. So we think it's really great because you can use that app. But in our case, one of the nice things is we have this really rich Android platform, but if you're, say, on the BlackBerry platform and you just use Twitter, you can talk about a restaurant, and we actually still collect the information. So now when somebody uses the Android platform and says, okay, well, Baby Blues Barbecue, Amanda may have mentioned it on her BlackBerry through Twitter, but through Android you'll be able to actually look at all of the stream that's going on around Baby's Barbecue. So
right.
Interesting. I just want to interject here. If anyone has questions during the show, make sure you're using the hashtag TWiA Android. because if you have questions for Jeremy or any of us.
Yeah, I'm watching the chat room here too, so if you guys have questions.
Absolutely. So, and one of the things we're really excited about for our product is we're giving the folks that are using the hashtag TWiA Android, if you basically mention SocialGuides with the hashtag, we're releasing next week, and we're giving basically everybody a week early preview, so we'll send you guys the app basically a week early time. So.
Excellent. So just say, I want SocialGuides.
There it is.
Hashtag TWiA Android.
So we do have a question from the chat room. So CauseDroid wants me to ask you about Buzz. Is your product like Buzz? Is it how do you see yourself in comparison to Buzz?
Yeah, so Buzz is a really exciting, interesting product, and what they're doing is working basically around Twitter search, and then they're comparing it to particularly nightlife is where they're strong at. And so one of the things we do is around location. So one of the challenges is, you know, there may be a lot of, let's say, Wahoo's Fish Tacos in Southern California. Which one are you talking about? So what we do is basically mash up a lot of location services around the conversation, and we're sort of unique in that space. So.
Okay.
It's nice that you don't have to join yet another platform to be part of SocialGuides. I think that's one interesting piece of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the nice thing is, you know, you can open up the app and you don't have to be a Twitter user to use the app, because you can consume a lot of content. And a lot of people, when they're just looking for a great restaurant or hotel, they might want to see what's just the buzz about a place. But then ultimately, you know, if you want to contribute back, all you have to do is log in. It's not, you know, sign up profile number 342. You just kind of go straight to it.
Now, isn't there something I hear about double hashtags? What's that all about?
So one of the things we're doing is, because we make it very easy to talk about restaurants or hotels, and on Twitter, we've basically come up with a way to bound the place you're talking about. So if it's Baby Blues Barbecue, you know, how do you hashtag it? Well, you might put it together, or you might just say, well, we bound it. So the beginning of the hashtag is baby, right, and at the end is barbecue. And so it's a very simple way for us to identify places.
Okay, great. I think this is something I've talked to Robert Scoble about a lot. You know, he seems to like the gaming aspect of a Foursquare or a Gowalla, but then there are people like me that are looking at this sort of thing as a basic utility. I want something that's going to give me useful information about a local area and the little boutique restaurants that are there that the locals go to.
Right.
And to be able to just cull that information from the Twitter stream and see what the locals are saying is much more valuable to me. I mean, I understand how people like becoming the mayor of a place and unlocking badges and that kind of thing, but I'm not a game-focused individual. I would rather have a basic utility that's giving me more information on the place, as opposed to just the people that are there, but also taking into consideration my friends that have also visited.
Yeah, and one of the things we did when we built the product was we said, you know, there's two different types of use cases. People who are going to be very interested in the gaming aspect, and what's nice is we can see a lot of that come through the stream. So when somebody like a Scoble goes and says, I'm going to be the mayor of a restaurant, well, that'll come through the stream. So that's really valuable for him and for other consumers. But if you're a consumer who are just looking for what is the place as I walk down the main street in Santa Monica, what's a lot more useful for me as somebody who's interested in discovery is finding out, okay, what is everybody saying about the place and making decisions based on it. So that's really kind of where we're focused at.
And I think one final point, just I think that's going to be great for you, is that there's some analyst statistics that say that by, I think, 2013, the mobile is going to be the way that we browse the web, not online.
Right.
So obviously that's got to be
good
for you.
we're really excited because we're seeing basically a big shift in consumer behavior right now, where mobile and particularly Android and iPhone are really kind of leading the way into very soon we're going to see the vast majority of people sort of accessing the cloud in the real world, and that's really what location-based services are really excited about seeing push the envelope.
So what's next for you guys after this?
So what's next for us is we're basically, as we roll out the product, we're pushing out next week, and we're giving everybody early looks this week, and then you basically wait and see what happens then.
Okay, cool.
All right, so if you want to try out SocialGuides, make sure you just say, I want SocialGuides with our hashtag.
On Twitter, your @, and SocialGuides, is that correct?
You just say @SocialGuides, and then you guys, the handle for TWiA Android.
Yep.
@SocialGuides.
Yes,
and just that.
@SocialGuides.
Great. Well, I think it's time to have a caller. What do you guys think?
I think it's time.
Yeah. Why don't we get someone on the line here? Open lines.
Yep. Hello.
Hello, caller. Are you there?
I am here.
Oh, who do I have on the line? We have Aaron Brazel, who is better known as Techno Sailor. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing really well, Amanda. I've got about 40 inches of snow coming into D.C.
Oh,
but
my
other
goodness.
than that, I know you guys are nice and warm and toasty down there with
Well,
your
It's
no,
raining and
it's
cold here now. I
raining
don't know
and
what's up with
cold.
that.
It's like 55 degrees. It's
Oh, that's
horrible.
kind of warm.
And wet. We've got the rain, you've got the snow.
We don't know what to do. We're not used to this.
Only in California is 50 degrees cold.
So everyone, Aaron is also the author of the WordPress Bible. How is that doing? How are sales doing, Aaron?
Well, I don't have exact numbers right now, but I'm really pleased that I've been watching the Amazon sales rank over the last few days, and it's hovering right in the top 5,000, which is a pretty notable number, as I understand it. So
Congratulations.
I'm pretty happy so far.
Nice. Well, the reason we have Aaron on the line today is WordPress is now available on Android. Is that correct?
Yep, they just announced the other day.
Now, what do you think that's going to do for diehard iPhone users? I mean, do you think it's going to have an impact that WordPress is now on Android?
I think for the demographic that wants to blog from their phone, I think, I mean, it's going to have some sort of impact. I'm not entirely sure that blogging is set up to be done from a mobile phone. I mean, there are certain use cases that allow for that, but I think by and large, blogging continues to probably be something that is done from a computer. But for those people who like to, be able to post their photos or be able to just sort of take their blog on the go and respond to comments, etc.
Right.
I think I think from now, full disclosure here, I don't actually have an Android phone.
That was my next question.
So have you seen this? Have you actually played around with this at all, or have you seen it somewhere else?
No, in fact, I haven't. I tried, but to be fair, it just came out like 2 days ago, and
Yeah.
I've been hunkered down trying to get ready for this storm, and I just haven't been able to make it out to a store.
Are you saying that the weather is more important to you than technology right now?
Well, it's kind of a pain to have to go into the Verizon store, so I think that's more along the lines of what I'm trying to say. But I tell you what, it does look, comparing the features between the iPhone version and the Android version does have a little ways to go. Right now, it does just support posts, pages, and comments. And, the WordPress remote API does support much more than that. I think the iPhone version does support much more of that too. But I think over time you're going to see a real competition between the two.
Yeah.
So whichever product ends up supporting more of the internal WordPress features, I think is going to be the winner there. But clearly, it's all open source, so anybody who really wants a feature and has the skill set can really go in there and start contributing as well.
Okay. Now, do you think that the form factor of the phones themselves comes into play in terms of blogging from your phone?
That's a good question, yeah.
Because for me, I mean, I need to have a keyboard.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that's really attractive to me about the Android phones is that a lot of them have keyboards. And with an iPhone, obviously, you have the touch. But do you think that comes into play at all?
Well, I don't know, to be honest with you. I think anybody who's going to be using WordPress from a mobile phone is going to be used to their handset or will get used to their handset.
Right.
So the people who do really... Now, I don't have an iPhone. I have a BlackBerry. I know I'm stuck in the Stone Age here, but I have a BlackBerry.
Everyone...
But I tell you what, there's something nice about the tactile touch of a keyboard that I just can't deal with a touch screen. I could, but it would be arduous and painful. And but the people who use iPhones, I mean, they do the touch screen all day long. So I think it really goes to who, the people who own the phones get used to them. If they're not used to them yet, they will be. And it'll just, I don't know that it necessarily plays in.
Right.
There's actually Nicole from the audience wants to know.
Sure.
Do you know if WordPress, the WordPress app swallowed up the old WP2Go app?
I do believe it did.
What does that mean? What is she saying?
I'm 90% certain. I'm 90% certain that it did, based on reading up on it on launch day. But You know, I can't answer that 100% right now without knowing I'm going by my memory.
What is the old WPT Go app? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. What is that?
I don't know myself.
Oh.
Again, I'm not.
Okay.
I don't actually have an Android phone. I'm going on secondhand information.
Got it. Okay.
So as far as I remember historically, that was actually a user-created app. So one of the things that's kind of exciting about the Android marketplace is there's a lot of more one-off apps.
Yeah.
And Google's done a good job of sort of encouraging developers to build sort of on the side sort of fun apps to see where they go. And that happened to be one of them that was originally made by, I don't know if he was affiliated or not with WordPress at the beginning, but.
Right.
So.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right. Well, let's throw this in here. Do you want to give one quick plug for the book?
Oh, absolutely. I'll make this real quick. You know, this is a book that I spent a lot of time on to try to really bring WordPress, as simple as it is, and make it even easier for beginners, but also provide a resource that even developers and theme designers can really wrap their heads around and really get everything and try to explain technical stuff in a way that anybody can understand without making it so, low level that, the more advanced people wouldn't get into it. So
Right.
It's so far been well received. People can pick it up by going to Amazon.
Okay.
Of course, the short link is bit.ly/WP Bible.
Okay.
But, going to Amazon and searching for the WordPress Bible will pull it up as well.
All right, but bit.ly WordPress Bible.
WP Bible, yep.
WP Bible. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. We've got to jump off now. We've got someone else on the line, but thank you so much for your time. And everyone, it's at TechnoSailor if you want to follow him on Twitter.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. See ya. All right.
Cool.
And I think we also have Nicole from last week
Yep,
on the
Nicole
phone
Cosma.
again. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, let's get Nicole on the line. Hello, Nicole. Are you there?
Yes.
Great. Nice to have you back. This is Associate Editor Nicole Cosma from Android Guys. Nice to have you back again.
Thank you very much. Nice to be back.
Great. So I think what we'll do now is maybe jump into
I think she
bit
had,
more stories?
Nicole, did you have a few more some
Points?
thoughts on what we just listened to with the WordPress
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, actually, I was going to explain real quick that WordPress To Go app. I think that was done by a fan, and
Okay.
the official WordPress app now looks identical. So that's why I was curious if they decided to bring them on board or.
It's rather
there's no
suspicious if
difference
it's
at all?
exactly the same, yeah.
No, there is absolutely no difference. Same UI, same menus, everything.
Yeah.
Open source is
Interesting.
nice like that, isn't it?
Yeah. It happens with a lot of things, like the Foursquare app is kind of being passed around too, so I'm kind of curious where that's going.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the one that's on the market now is kind of mediocre. It's not really where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing too, Nicole. What are your thoughts on Android 2.1?
Well, I'm actually currently talking on this one, so
Great.
I love it. I think it's fast. As far as the multi-touch comment, I know Jeff had mentioned that, Andy, Ruben, and Jeff Ammons are the only people that don't like multi-touch, but that's not really true. A lot of people just don't care about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, it's not necessary really for a lot of the things that, the way that Android is implemented.
Well, I would think the use case would be different with iPhone versus Android in terms of multi-touch too.
Yeah, it's just odd.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are used to it.
Yeah.
That I mean, I don't want to. I think there's a lot of people who are Android purists who look at that is a distinctely iPhone gesture.
thing.
So I think
Yeah.
it's sort of they don't like it because it's an iPhone thing.
True.
So and I don't. I'm not Nicole. I'm not talking about you necessarily, but I'm just saying I think there is sort of that feeling, right? Because the Android. I mean, the thing that we all love about the Android phone is that it's open and that it's powerful and that you can get in there and do things. It's very anti-Apple in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In the way it's just implemented. So. So I do think there's a little bit of that. However, from a market perspective, so many people have become used to that gesture that why not have it? I mean, at least make it an option. That you can disable if you don't like it.
There'd be an interesting area to explore, which is how many people that are going over to Android are coming from the iPhone versus how many are actually going
Right.
from sort of a dumb phone or an older phone. Because the folks that are coming from an older phone, they're not as trained to use gestures anyway. So a lot of the features that are on Android are sort of so whiz bang magic that they're not really trained that. Gestures is basically, the next big thing.
That's fair.
So those guys may not be looking for it per se. So.
Yeah, I think in the past that a lot of people were kind of happy with the state that Android was already in, but moving forward, a lot of people have been a lot more open to things changing. I mean, like you displayed, the Gallery app is completely different from the stock Android gallery that we first saw when the phones were first released, and even up until 1.6. So, you know, it's change is accepted. It's hard for some, just like everything else, you know.
Yeah.
They're used to one thing, and it changes, and they're like, oh, but I like the way it used to do this. But then they get used to the new one, and they grow accustomed to it, and they start liking it. I mean, I love the new Gallery app. I think it looks great.
But why, Nicole? Why do you think Google waited to implement multi-touch? It's just odd, isn't it? I mean, what do you think? What do you think the story is there?
Are they hiding something?
Yeah, I mean, people have discussed this over and over. There is really no clear reason. I just, you know, people were saying, well, Apple has the patent on that, you know, locked or whatever, and it's like, well, that's kind of like I don't know, it's a motion, not really, to me, it doesn't seem like something you can say, only we can do this, you know?
Right.
It's kind of like, it's like saying only we can carve wood, you know? It's like
Yeah, well, I mean, that's patent law, though. I mean, the ridiculous things have been patented before.
One click.
Yeah, one click. Multimedia, comprehensive media, you know, there's all kinds of ridiculous stuff out there that's been patented. So. Yeah,
and Apple does have a history for ridiculous issues with patents and copyrights, so I don't doubt it, but still don't think it's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know you guys are discussing a lot of news today, and so I went ahead and pulled up something that wasn't on your agenda, and basically this is about the Nook, the Barnes & Noble Nook that runs on Android.
Yep.
And today an update was released for it for the Nooks that are in stores, and I believe some of the users received the update as well. But there's a couple of improvements. They have improved opening of ebooks and periodicals. A lot of people were complaining that was a little bit sluggish.
Oh, it was horrendous.
Yeah.
It wasn't just sluggish. It was horrible.
Horrible.
I mean, just for people who don't know, the Nook is Barnes & Noble's Kindle killer, if you will, or attempt to sort of displace the Kindle. So,
yeah.
And it runs the Android operating system. So, but it's very much like a Kindle.
So hopefully that's a little bit better. I haven't got to test it yet, but I'm hoping that it will open them a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I said this last week, but I tried it in the store in Barnes & Noble. I clicked on a book, and I'm like, did it break? And then like 10 seconds later, boom, the book appears. I'm like, really? And the guy was like, oh, yeah, it takes a while to load. I'm like, no. Fail.
I think that comes from people changing the font settings on a particular book because it comes in a certain size, and when you adjust it from there to large or extra large.
Yeah, but you know what? That's just no excuse. There should never be a load time for a book like that.
No,
it's ridiculous.
For a book.
They also are going to have the bookmarks. Sorry. The bookmarks will now display the page number, and eligible Lend Me ebooks in the library will include a Lend Me flag, which Lend Me is Barnes & Noble's program for sharing your books with other people for a 14-day period of time if it's allowed by that particular publisher. And now you can actually see which books are allowed to be lent, which seems like it should have been there from the beginning.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
that's really weird.
And they're finally rolling out the special promotions for people that walk into a store with a Nook, and supposedly have improved the connectivity when you walk into a store, making that an instant connection to the store rather than having to go through the menu and make sure you're connected to the BN Wi-Fi.
Right. Right.
They've been as a company upgrading a lot of their Wi-Fi, so that makes a lot of sense to do the initiative now. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and as a caveat here, I actually work for Barnes & Noble too, so.
Got
Full
it.
disclosure.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. Now I'm in trouble.
No, that's okay.
Now I'm in trouble.
No
I
worries.
work there, but I'm also a realist, so I see the issues.
Good to know.
Real quick, I have
yeah.
Sorry, Nicole. I was going to say I have a question here that's going back to SocialGuides. Do you have the app on your phone?
Yeah,
I do not. The reason I was asking about Buzzed is because everything that was being described was pretty much similar to an app that I just reviewed for another site that I work for, and unfortunately my experience with Buzz was not so great, but I was kind of curious if this was, the same route. Buzz does use location-based areas. It uses either GPS or you can manually set your location, and it does pull up the tweets that are from those locations that are nearby.
Right. So maybe the easiest way is to just walk through the product really quick.
Yeah, do you mind just
show
showing it? Yeah, well,
there's
we
this
have
fancy
the
new
Android cam,
right?
You got to use the Android cam. I don't know why we haven't used it.
Come on, let's show off this Android cam again.
Absolutely.
All right.
Very high-tech piece of equipment, the Android cam.
Let's see.
And as a side note, I'd be very interested in reviewing it too. So, I mean, if you wanted to
we'll
send
set
it
that
over.
up then.
Good times. So one of the things we do is we set it up very content driven. So when you come in, it's eat, drink, sleep, and be merry. Be merry is basically the location stream around you right now, and we'll just kind of go and walk through one of the food settings. So.
Oh, yeah, you can hold it like, yeah. There you
Let's
go.
see.
Yeah,
Let's get it out of
careful with
the wind. So. I don't know if we can read it, but basically the top entry is basically a trending place that's for the area, so it's Baby Blues Barbecue. And you can change settings on how far out it is and sort of the standard location.
There was just a big tweet up there last night. I happen to know that from a lot of people we know actually were there.
Yeah, so there's actually a pretty heavy stream that's gone on about this place because it's one of the more popular places. But you can do, if I was to say, I actually don't think I've ever been there, so I can say
They called it a meet for meat.
Yep.
This is Sean Percival's thing too, by the way, if I'm not mistaken.
So basically, I just said I wanted to go there. I could check in if we happen to be there right now. I can rate the place if I've been there before, that sort of thing. So all this stuff is sort of the standard process, but then it's all used through the Twitter platform, which is quite nice. So.
Did you just give it a bad rating?
No, I actually canceled out. I know that would put a lot of people up in arms. So same thing. Diddy Rice Cookies is another one I think is a very, very popular place in the area. So same kind of thing. You can get a sense for what people are talking about in the area. And again, kind of one of the core things our technology does is ensure that the places that you're talking about are the actual place. So if there's multiple venues that are in a city, one of the challenging things is making sure tying the location back actually to the tweet. So.
Yeah,
and
that's
you can
actually
submit them too, right?
So we could submit it. So in a sense, it's just a Twitter location client at its basic level, right? But it actually ties all of the content around it.
Now, how do you normalize? This is like the age-old problem with Foursquare, right? So Gold's Gym, there's Gold's Gym Venice, there's Gold's Venice, there's and Gold's apostrophe S. So how do you normalize the places and make sure that there's only one copy of each place?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're fortunate, so I'm very fortunate to have a great team around me, and the guy who actually runs the product for this was the product manager at Google Local, and that was basically his job. So there's a little secret sauce in there.
Yeah.
So in the same way, so one of the things we'll go back to.
So you're not going to tell me, basically.
That was a very cagey way.
Magic happens
here, right? That's a very cagey way of saying, but same sense we can see.
All right, so here's the inverse of that question. How do I add something that you don't have?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we see, which is really great, is to see the content that goes on in the local stream, and as you hashtag it, we'll see places that aren't there, and then we automatically pick them up, and then basically our team can go and manually add them, and eventually there'll be self-provisioning as well. So that's
okay. So basically, you have to approve the new places, essentially. Okay.
But we have roughly 300,000 restaurants that are sort of in hotels and nightclubs that are ready to go right now, and that list is getting much larger. So we have a pretty strong coverage just for the area.
So what cities are you looking to go out to?
Yeah, so when we launch next week, we're basically launching in 10 cities, which are sort of the major metros around the area. And one of the nice things, because we have the ability to have a real-time pulse in the area, as people start trying to use it for other areas, we'll basically turn them live. So as we start seeing sort of an interest in people hashtagging other restaurants and other hotels and other metros, we'll immediately turn them live. So
great. Nicole, do you have any questions for Jeremy?
No, just a comment. I mean, it looks a lot better than the other app that I reviewed.
Well, thank you, Nicole.
We'll make sure you get a copy of it.
That'd be awesome.
Great. Well, I think we have a lot of other news stories we still need to cover, so why don't we head on into news?
Why don't we leave Nicole on? I'd love to have. Let's have Nicole.
And magically, we have in studio Mark Jeffrey for the news.
Hey, I'm back. I'm back once again.
Exciting.
So after I've given you my show in a Leno-like manner, and hopefully I won't Conan it back from you.
I know.
So
my show.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's get on to the news here. So let's see. Well, we've talked about our first story already. So the second story here is that in the Apple App Store, basically they've told a developer to remove all references to Android in the entry. Yes.
Wow.
So here's the direct
first
quote.
rule of the App Store. I think I read a headline that said first rule of the App Store is
Don't.
only talk about the Apple App Store.
Yeah, no, it's it's a
I can't
bit
remember who
sketchy.
wrote
But anyway,
that.
so basically for the Flash of Genius SAT vocab, developer Tim Novikov.
Oh, did we lose you, Nicole?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
So apparently Apple wrote him and said, quote, "It would be appropriate to remove finalist in Google's Android Developers Challenge from the application's description." So question, is this too heavy on Apple, too heavy-handed on Apple's part? Or do they have a right to do this? What do you think?
I mean, if they're just saying that they were a finalist in a competition, I mean, that's something that's in a boilerplate of any press release. You know, I mean, who cares?
you say definitely it's a typical Apple move. It's
Yeah.
If you're in the App Store, who cares if you're mentioning Android? You're obviously already where they want you to buy their product.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think this is just crazy. I don't think that, this is a terrible thing for Apple to be doing.
I think more than anything, it shows that they're nervous.
Oh, they're very clearly they're nervous.
Obviously. Like, I think it's a bad move just for that reason. From a PR standpoint, that just looks bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they anticipated it blowing up into a big story like this. So.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, probably now that it's become a thing, that they may back off from it in this particular instance. But who knows?
Shows yet again how hard it is to get an app in the Apple App Store.
Yeah, well, there's that. This would certainly never happen in the Android market.
No,
Right.
it certainly wouldn't.
So.
I mean, that's I've done multiple Android and iPhone apps, and one of the things that's always exciting is the rolling the dice on the iPhone side to see when it comes in versus the immediate excitement of popping the bubbly when it goes through.
So are you saying that when SocialGuides does get on the iPhone, then you're going to make sure that it says in the description also available on Android?
Actually,
here's a link.
We were just going to rename the app Android app and see how that rolls through, but.
You know, there are a lot of Android apps that mention the iPhone. They're like, oh, our app is, a top app on the App Store, and or this is the same company that makes the iPhone app, and you don't see Google having a heart attack over it.
Exactly. So
Okay.
final answer, kind of petty, not a good idea.
Not cool. Not cool.
Very petty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, on to the next story. So, this week, Seismic released their latest version of their Android client. So, Seismic is a very popular client for us using Twitter, as you know. There's been a lot of complaints that the Twitter clients on the Android platform have not been up to par with respect to what's on the iPhone. And having used both now quite a bit, I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although Seismic seems to be the best one, in my opinion. I haven't seen one that's better.
Yeah.
And the new version is actually quite nice. I just downloaded it recently, and I was pretty impressed with it. So I think coming over as an iPhone user, that was one of my biggest complaints, was that the certain apps like that in the market just weren't quite there, and Seismic definitely took
So are you saying that this Seismic app on the Android looks like an iPhone app?
Yeah, I mean, that was the big story. Actually,
shall we put the cam up?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, let's
You
get
have it
the
loaded?
Android cam
Fantastic.
again.
There it
So
is.
the big thing
Here we
was
go. Let's bring it on over.
the big thing was that it looks the big not criticism but observation was that the new Seismic app on Android is very Apple-like.
Here we go.
There it is. So
It's very Apple-ish.
It does look very Apple-like.
You know, as a developer, though, you certainly can see some of the UI elements aren't Apple-ish. So the tabs above are very standard Android UI
that's
elements.
very Android.
Yeah.
And there's a very different navigation
bit.
process.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of glare on there.
Yeah.
There we go. So it's what I think is a bigger issue is that it's actually getting to Apple-level polish, which is a good thing for the whole market. So.
Which is something we talked about last week in terms of Android versus Apple. The polish.
Yeah, I think that the polish for me has been the biggest sort of mental stumbling
Mm-hmm.
block on the Android, is that it's things don't feel as intuitive.
Right.
It's obviously a lot more powerful, and it should overcome the iPhone very quickly and evolve very quickly. But right now, it just feels your grandmother doesn't intuitively know how to use it in the same manner that she would an iPhone.
You know, as a developer, it's been an interesting challenge. So being a developer on both platforms, one of the things we've noticed is that the iPhone makes it very easy to do sort of sexy animation. And the Android, as the SDK is sort of moving along, it's getting easier. But when we started, 6 months ago or so, the SDK wasn't at the stage where it was very easy. So anything that kind of was pretty and fun and sexy, you were basically building on your own, as opposed to it was a very simple call on the iPhone. That's getting better though, and my anticipation is within another 6 months or so, and we'll see a very well-developed platform on that piece. So.
Yeah. So do you think that Android apps should aim for Apple-like UI conventions or not?
I think Android apps should aim for very good user experience, which Apple does a good job of, but you don't necessarily need to emulate that, right? The goal is to get the level of polish that the Apple apps have, but not necessarily emulate how the Apple apps have it.
Got it. What do you think, Nicole? What's on your mind with this topic?
I like the new Seismic update. I am actually a hardcore Swift app user, Swift Twitter client. It's the most reliable. It's not the prettiest out of the bunch, but I'm more concerned with it being reliable and always receiving tweets, direct messages, etc. So I would say next on the list would be probably Seismic. It's still missing integrated timeline features for multiple accounts, but it does look better. It has more functionality than...
I think it does have multiple account support now, though.
It does.
Yeah, I think
The latest one does have that.
it has multiple account, but no integration into the timeline together. They're viewed separately.
Okay.
Good point.
Okay,
And a lot of people are wanting it integrated, and they also have added a lot of new things, but you still can't change the theme color or anything, and it's kind of bright for me personally. But another big contender has come along, TWiA, which is a brand new Twitter client, and also Tweetcaster. Tweetcaster looks fantastic. It's kind of setting a bar for new UIs and Twitter clients, and TWiA is pretty awesome too. It has a whole full set of features, but it's a little buggy at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen in the chat room Swift is mentioned. I don't know if did you?
She just mentioned Swift. Yeah.
I'm trying to read and listen. My brain's not getting it all in one place.
Multitasking Android.
Exactly. Well,
yes.
And why don't we move on to the next story then?
Sure. Okay, so the next story, apps from Europe, Android apps that are produced by developers in Europe seem to have about a 50% higher price than equivalent Android apps produced in the United States. So there's a new study by Distimo, basically comparing the average price of these apps, and they found that it's on average 49% higher. So call it 50% higher.
Yeah.
So the question is, why is this? Why are European apps, so much more?
Because the euro is worth more than the dollar.
Conversion.
No. It's not a conversion thing. It's not that. It's all in dollars.
Actually, I think they're...
Go ahead, Nicole.
We lost her.
Nicole, you there?
Oh, I think we lost
She went
Nicole. If
down.
we get her back on, then we'll buzz her back in.
So one of the things to consider is just that the smartphone penetration is different in Europe as it is in the U.S. So you have a little bit different of a market that you're going after there than you do here, and certainly even more so in emerging markets. So there's a lot of opportunity in Android as they go through both in the international market, particularly in emerging markets. So the folks that are buying them may be in a different class. So that's kind of an important thing when you're looking to market to the product. So.
Do you think it's a different sort of app? Do you think it's like a more business class kind of an app that's selling over there, or because it's been around for a little bit longer?
Yeah, there's a bit of a difference of a class,
Nicole?
and then there's a difference of the people who are buying it. So one of the things that's an interesting, if you just look at the demographics, is people like the mommy blogger demographic is actually very high tech savvy in the U.S. and that hasn't quite caught on at the same level in Europe. So there just is a different buying pattern.
What do you think, Nicole? Why do you think the apps in Europe are more expensive? Nicole?
You still there, Nicole?
Nicole, is your Android phone crashing on you? What's going on?
It's like the question kills your phone.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Sorry. We have tornadoes here, so we have bad weather.
Oh.
Sorry.
What is it? Aaron had snow.
Wow.
You've got tornadoes. We have rain. What's going on today?
Yeah, it's totally not my phone. I normally have perfect reception.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh my.
I think the reason is because the lowest amount of money that they can charge is still worth more than just $1 in USD. So I think that's the reason it costs more generally, like as a whole. I mean, some apps are a little bit pricey to us, but in euros they're not really.
See,
I mean,
she agrees with me.
Fair enough.
The girls win on this one.
The girls
win.
are all teamed up on us. So, all right. So on to the next story then, I guess. So sales of Google's Nexus 1 haven't really seemed to be improving, oddly enough.
I think this is going to be a weekly discussion.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there's been a couple different estimates. One estimate has 20,000 sales in week 1. So if you basically 80,000 sales in its first month.
Yeah.
Is what and it doesn't seem to be growing. And compared to first month sales of the iPhone, which they moved 600,000 units.
Wow.
So a much, pretty much a 7 or 8x comparison there. So, question: is the Nexus One not doing well, or is this something inherent about the Nexus One that? What do you think this means? Does this mean something? Does this mean nothing?
Shoot, Jeremy.
It's an interesting case because T-Mobile is a much smaller carrier than AT&T is. So as you launch with a carrier that's smaller, you're just going to have a smaller reach. The marketing blitz is clearly a little bit different. They don't have the reach, right, that they necessarily would in an AT&T store plus the Apple store. So one of the things that's different about the Nexus One is that it basically is an online-only product at least for the time being.
Right.
Theoretically, that will start picking up steam because there's a lot of things in the rumor mill, right, that it will become an a la carte type of entry. So instead of going and picking out your carrier first and then going and buying the phone, you're going to do the opposite, which is I'm picking out the phone at the Google store and then I'm going to go and select which carrier I'm going to do. Obviously, we're not quite there yet, but there seems to be indication. There's been a number of cases where there's been screenshots of FCC applications of basically the frequency ranges for other networks. So if we really do see that play out, then that will probably change the landscape a bit.
Yeah, TechFrog writes inside the chat room, needs to be in more networks. There are so many new phones coming out, and when the iPhone came out, it was game-changing at the time. So I guess he just thinks it just hasn't had the same sort of psychological impact that the iPhone had, and that's part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's that whole first
not
market
only that. I mean, if you have, there's a lot of droids floating around out there already.
Yeah.
So, if you have a droid, you're probably not going to run right away and get an extra.
Well, that's the point I want to raise. I'm on T-Mobile right now, and I'm on contract with a BlackBerry still. And although I've outgrown it and I want to get something else, they won't cut me a very good deal for a Nexus One.
Yeah, as
an existing user.
There's been a lot of hubbub on the internet about the sort of cases that you can get. The subsidized rates are much different on the Nexus One than they are if you went to go in and get a MyTouch from T-Mobile or something like that, because Google's kind of controlling a bit of the subsidy process.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to end up relaxing it. I think there's just been enough conversation around it that they probably should. So things like family plans right now, as far as I know, don't work with the Nexus One. So a lot of cases where actual existing T-Mobile users are excited about it.
Would like it, like me.
But they're not hitting the price point because it might be an extra $100 because it's only a partial subsidy instead of a full subsidy. So
yeah.
What do you think? I mean,
well,
go ahead, Nicole.
In T-Mobile's defense, the Nexus One is the same exact price as the G1 was at launch, getting your discount, a full discount on the phone. So I mean, it's not like I think there's other problems. I mean, aside from T-Mobile not being a larger carrier like AT&T is, I mean, they're a lot newer than AT&T is too.
Yeah.
But basically, the fact that the phone has had no exposure to public hands other than the people that were lucky enough to go visit it at Digital Experience in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
A lot of people would like to touch a phone before they buy it so they can find out, will this fit in my hand? Will I like it when I'm using it?
Absolutely.
And and when you can't go to a store to see it, it makes you reluctant to spend that much money on it.
Yeah.
And aside from that, you also have the issue with 3G. There's been a lot of users complaining that they're having 3G connectivity issues, they're having signal problems, things like that. And they just released an update for that. But I think having those things being problems from the get-go did not help them at all.
Right.
I mean, it definitely didn't make their case. And also the fact that with it not being in stores, the only advertising you have for this phone is online, word of mouth, and Google's homepage for those few first days.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the marketing campaign that the Verizon Droid had behind it.
Right, which was a huge marketing.
That was like a $100 million campaign.
Yeah, it was a big campaign.
It was monstrous.
Do you think we'll see it in Walmart, Nicole?
Do I think we'll see it in Walmart? No.
Well, we thought last week. We thought last week we'd see it in Walmart, but
yeah, guess not.
All right.
They yanked it out of our hands. Yeah, we got one more story.
One more story.
Okay, so this is a bit of a multi-part one. Basically, there's a lot of Adobe. It's about Adobe and Flash, basically. So the iPhone does not support Flash, right? For 3 years, Adobe's been trying to get Jobs to support it.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know.
No love lost.
Yeah, and yeah, they're pretty much not loving each other. That's pretty clear. And this week, Jobs called Adobe lazy, I think was the
Ooh, that's
Google
not
is
gonna help.
evil, and Adobe is lazy.
It was quite the conference.
Now, the Flash works fine on Android-based devices, right? So the question is, and then now we have HTML5, which is basically now becoming mature. It's still young, but it's getting close enough to being real that it's starting to threaten Adobe and Flash. And Flash's dominance. I mean, right now, Flash accounts for 75%. 75% of all video viewed online is viewed via a Flash browser. You know, YouTube is all Flash. You know, pretty much. So, so the question is, and so this is the question: Google could sweep in, and Scobelizer wrote a post on this. Robert Scoble, tech pundit, Scobelizer.
That's now his name.
I just have to slow down.
Scobelizer.
I just call people by their
Twitter handles. There's no real names
now.
anymore.
Yeah, it's like superheroes. Like Scobelizer, Tech Frog, Adventure Girl. So basically, you have a situation where Adobe is struggling, Flash is struggling. It's being very seriously threatened by HTML5. Google and Apple hates it. Something Apple hates. Do you think Google will sweep in and save it and use it as a stick to hit Apple over the head with?
Pinata.
Yeah.
Well,
what do you think about that scenario?
One of the things that can't be underestimated is there's a very different class of developer that's in the Flash environment, and those guys haven't really had a good sense of access to mobile phones. So especially on iPhone, because if iPhone was to allow Flash access, there would be an entirely new developer class that would be building a lot of sort of casual games and that sort of thing. So the switch over into Android supporting Flash is a bit of a big deal. One of the things that surprises me is we don't see more Flash activities that are going on in Android. HTML5 is close. I've done a bunch of development on it, and it's interesting. It's not quite at Flash's level in terms of graphics, but it's getting there. I think one of the things that's been interesting is there's been a very hot app that basically is a reverse engineering of Google Voice. It's been built completely on HTML5 to show basically how powerful you could do by having a local database and then using sort of a lot of the sexy front-end features of HTML5. So those guys will kind of push, I think, both standards. And I think Google has toes in the water in both, right? 'Cause Google has vested interest in seeing HTML5 go ahead because it really makes their product move better in the web level and in sort of the Android level. But you also have a case where any access in a Flash for an Android is a hit against Apple. So in both cases, they're kind of playing an interesting game, right? Which is a good thing. Which is good for choice is always good, right? And so it's good for developer.
Why would they support both? I mean, equally. If I were them, I mean, why not? You have all these. It's exactly what you say.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Flash developers that are disenfranchised from building iPhone apps that would make awesome apps if you could just use Flash as your app platform, not have to write it in Java, not have to write it in Objective-C like you do on the iPhone platform. Right?
So we'll get closer to that because one of the things we're seeing in the development land is that there are a number of sort of environments that you can sort of pseudo build in another language and then it builds in Java. And so one of the things I think is things like that will become more easy for developers. So there'll be these sort of crossover languages for them, so they can build it in Perl or they can build it in Flash and these sort of things, and then it just very easily goes. And that market's actually much more mature in the iPhone space. So there's a lot of development tools that make it very easy to make a web-based application.
Yeah, we've seen some of these. I mean, we saw like Mobile Roadie, and there's a few other ones that are sort of like that.
Absolutely.
But you can only make simple apps.
Absolutely.
I mean, these things are just basically syndicate my video, my audio, my.
But the first step really in the Android level is to do the same sort of thing and make it easy for a Flash developer to go in and put it inside of a shell that's a Java shell. So.
Yes. So you could build something that's very complex and very rich.
Yep.
And very much like any, as rich as any Flash app.
Right.
And basically, that is the app that you download. If we could see that, I mean, I would think that would be a huge stick.
It's a good start. So
huge stick.
No, just feel, hey, Jobs, what do you think about that? All Flash developers can now develop on the Android platform.
So, but I think one of the things as a developer that's really exciting about any of these platforms is being able to have really deep hooks into the platform itself. So being able to access the contacts and access the maps. And so one of the challenges is you don't have the deep really level access when you go and sort of use one of these pseudo languages. So.
That's actually a very good point. So you basically wanted some sort of SDK, like a Flash SDK of some sort.
Exactly.
To the Flash. So.
Nicole, what about you? What do you think?
I think Flash on pretty much all of the phones that can access the web would be a great idea. However, at the same time, I do hear a lot of developers crying for Flash to go away. So
True.
Why do they want? Why do they hate Flash so much?
Yeah.
From the developer point of view.
You know, I've asked that question, and it's kind of like circular logic when it gets explained to you. But
yeah, I don't get that. It's just another choice. So why wouldn't you want to use it? Like, why wouldn't you want another choice available to you as a developer? That's what I don't understand. You're at a loss as well. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I have one more story I want to throw in at the end.
Sure. It's your show.
Mystery story.
I know,
Sounds exciting.
It's my story.
It's your show.
Well, I want to throw in Nokia for a second.
Okay.
Nokia's Symbian operating system is now open source. So I think that's something that shouldn't be ignored. You know, they've decided to go open source, and obviously, I think in response to what we've got going on with Android, and it's a huge, huge thing in Europe. I mean, obviously, Symbian isn't here, but
how many users does Symbian have? Do you know?
Like 330 million Symbian phones or something.
All right, so basically, roughly the population of the United States.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just a few
around the world are using Symbian-based phones. Now, how long ago did they? I mean, is this first of all? Let's clarify one thing: is the Symbian open source release a direct response to Android, or has this been going on for some time? I actually did a little bit of research before the show, and I couldn't figure it out quickly. Do you know the answer to that, Nicole?
I think it's a recent thing. I mean, I think I saw that posted on a news post just like a few days ago.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there has been recent news about it. What I don't know is whether it's been an ongoing effort that's been underway for a while and it's just come to fruition, or whether they just said, "Oh crap! Look, Android, we better get out there and make this open source right now."
Exactly.
Right. And so if so I guess your question is, does Symbian threaten Android?
Well, not even does it threaten Android, but if we have Symbian and Android, do those together really threaten iPhone?
Well, I think of course they threaten.
Yeah.
Two open source platforms threatening a closed platform.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And will Symbian, being open source in Europe, obviously, be the big threat in Europe for Google.
Well, so the big elephant in the room when you talk about the devices is Nokia, right? So and Nokia has been interesting because they are a big part of the Symbian alliance, right? So I don't know off the top of my head if Symbian open source just recently, or if it's been a little while in the making. But if you look at that compared to the Nokia Ovi store, right? So there's been a subtle progression of the older carriers and the older platforms and sort of the older system software to sort of move into, because like it or not, the iPhone definitely pushed the envelope. So it's pulling everybody in the right direction. And Android is the next step, which is basically going to take something that we pulled everybody in the right direction, and now we're sort of globalizing it too. And that's always a good thing. So.
Okay.
Right.
Symbian carries a heavy weight, though. I mean, they have a lot of users.
They do.
I mean,
they do.
Nokia is very, very, very big, and it's hard to realize that when you live in the United States.
Exactly.
Overseas, it's ridiculous. I mean, Nokias are everywhere.
And this week in Android is global.
There it is.
All right.
So yeah, well, I think that's it then.
I think that's a show.
Any final thoughts? We've got Jeremy Almond over here, SocialGuides, everyone. Make sure you check them out at SocialGuides on Twitter. Make sure you let us know if you want to try that. So again, at hashtag TWiA Android. I want SocialGuides. We've got Mark Jeffrey. And I'm A. Coolong on Twitter. We have Nicole on the line, too.
We have one announcement.
We do? An announcement.
I almost forgot this, so I'm glad I didn't.
Okay.
So this week in Android has a new blogger that just came on this week. Basically, for those of you who watch This Week in Startups, it's a guy named Scott Simcoe, who is basically was a fan of the show and then came on and became like the blogger and the voice, the written voice of the show on the website. So we have the same thing. We have a young man who's still in high school. So his name is Max Salmaran. Max Salmaran, I believe I pronounced that correctly. I've only read his name. I've actually not talked to him. So
Max.
But Max is now blogging for us, and he will be more of a presence in this show, obviously, and in future shows. And he'll be writing the show notes for the show. So
excellent.
Max, welcome aboard.
Welcome
really
you,
happy
Max.
to have you.
Can't wait to have you.
Exciting.
Well, I think that about wraps it up, folks. This Week in Android, I'm your host, Amanda Coolong, and until next time.